You're listening to We Deepen Media.
Hey y'all, I have some exciting news to share. The We Deepen Podcast Network has expanded to include 2 new shows. First, Political Hope Podcast by Indy Reishi explores the lives, events, and minds pivotal for human evolution. Not always overtly political, Political Hope is intended to empower you to recognize your inherent voice and ability to enact progress in your local and global communities. Political Hope empowers action and the change you wish to see in the world. Second is the Elevate to Legendary podcast by Dr. Nikki. It's a journey to activate your fullest self-expression. Dr. Nikki interviews leaders who have transcended perceived limitations in order to make meaningful impact. Guests share their stories to teach you how to optimize your body, brain, and spiritual connection to manifest a truly fantastic life. Search for Political Hope and Elevate to Legendary in your podcast app, or go to wedeepen.com/podcasts to listen to the new shows. This podcast of Deepen with Christina is sponsored by RelateFest. RelateFest is for people who are endlessly curious about relationships. It's happening March 4th through 6th in Miami, Florida. Enjoy 2.5 days of socializing, learning, connection, and play. The event will feature relationship experts holding interactive workshops, small group discussions, and immersive experiences. RelateFest covers topics like exploring pleasure, relationship boundaries, navigating conflict and jealousy, monogamy, non-monogamy, polyamory, discovering and communicating personal needs and desires, tantra, kink, BDSM, rebuilding trust after betrayal, attachment theory, dating, love, and more. If you're one of those people who like talking about relationships, this event is for you. Go to wedeepen.com/RelateFest to learn more. You can also use special code DWC50 for $50 off the registration price. Again, that's wedeepen.com/RelateFest. Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Deepen with Christina. I'm your host, Christina Weber, founder of We Deepen, wedeepen.com. Go check out the calendar. There's a lot of fun stuff happening, and we'll continue to populate that with all types of social and transformational experiences, some in Los Angeles, and also some multi-day events happening in Miami, Austin. We might be doing something for South by Southwest. So we are definitely expanding. So check out the calendar if you haven't lately. Today, I am at Songbird Ocarina. You know, one of the recent episodes I had mentioned Durian Songbird, and I had mispronounced his name. And I'll say one of the things about having a podcast is that it's vulnerable. You know, you're putting yourself out there for all types of judgment. But when you ask for feedback, and I had asked him for feedback, and I got to learn that was mispronouncing his name. So just sharing that, and don't let any of these, self-doubts or self-criticisms hold you back from speaking your voice and getting out there and trying something new, because I'm going to keep learning along the way, and you're on the journey with me. So I'm at Songbird Ocarina. It's the Ocarina factory. It's like a toy factory in downtown, and Durian is who hosted Feminine Weapon Day at his home. And now I'm sitting here with Dr. Thyonne Gordon, and I'm really excited to share the wisdom that is, I would say, radiating from this woman, from decades of experience in social work, of being somebody who is an advocate for equality, for compassion, for lifting people up and for championing their voice and their impact. That's something actually even we just spoke about after you coming out of a training. And so one thing that we haven't said to each other, but I can just tell what we really align on is growth, of putting growth first. And it seems like that is a way of being that you live your life and making connections. And the two of us had connected 2 weeks prior to the 9th annual Feminine Weapon Day. And the theme this year is the space between stories. And I, in previous podcasts that I've recorded around Feminine Weapon Day, I've shared that, we were in this, for the past 7 years, Feminine Weapon Day has supported the Orphan Starfish Foundation and Art More and working with children, 13,000 children in 27 countries, and supplying the kids with education and art and healing programs. And this year we were essentially looking around and being like, who else? What other organizations can help? Because for me, I'm not a mother. I hope to be a mother at some point, but I do consider myself, I am a 40-year-old woman and a grown-up, and there's children. There's if I look at these big stats, there's 150 million orphans worldwide. There's 80 million children living without a single parent. And I've been through Feminine Weapon Day, we've been working with these kind of big initiatives and worldwide. And now we're beginning to focus on who's in our backyard, who's right around. And I'm sitting in Los Angeles, who's right around in Los Angeles. So I heard about this charity, She Ready. And I had looked into it. Someone had said, I looked onto their Instagram and I'm like, this is interesting, founded in March of 2021 by Tiffany Haddish. And I picked up the phone. It was one of those moments I had put on my calendar. It was a Sunday, and I put on my calendar on Monday morning at 10 a.m. I'm going to make sure I'm going to call. And I called from Instagram. Usually you're thinking who am I going to get when I call this number? And Dr. Thyonne answered the phone, and we had, it led into a beautiful 45-minute conversation. And I'm so impressed and inspired by the work that you do in the world. So I'm super excited to share you and your genius with those who are listening to this conversation today.
Oh, thank you, Christina. It's so exciting to be here. And I love being in the toy factory with you right here downtown Los Angeles in our backyard. And I love how you started this with the vulnerability. Podcast is a place where you get to be vulnerable. And yeah, I guess you could do some edits or something like that. But I think yours is it just streams straight through. And so in being vulnerable, we're able to actually see ourselves a little differently and allow other people to kind of get a little deeper. So just starting with the idea of vulnerability is beautiful. And yes, I'm Dr. Thyonne. So I'm going to correct my name with you. I think you said Thyonne. So I'm like, this is wonderful. This is it. And I am the executive director, acting executive director right now for Tiffany Haddish's She Ready Foundation, founded in 2019. And we are right here in the heart of Los Angeles. She Ready Foundation inspires, protects, and provides resources for youth who are impacted by foster care.
So it was 2019 that the organization founded. And I love the backstory behind it because I'm going to let you tell the story, but Tiffany Haddish grew up as a foster child. And so this is a very personal project, I'll say. I can use that word project to her. Tell us, can you give us the backstory and then how you got involved?
Absolutely. So Tiffany was in the foster care system. Her mom had a car accident and it affected her mental well-being. And so Tiffany and her siblings were placed in foster care. In the end, they were with their grandmother. They got Kinship Care, which is really important, I believe, in the foster care system, is to try and find people that are related that could perhaps assist and support these young people and pay them the same way you would pay stranger care. So Tiffany grew up in foster care, and in that setting, she understood some of the things that were happening with her that she didn't like. First of all, when she would move from place to place in the beginning, they would put her belongings in trash bags. And she said it made her feel like garbage. And so in Tiffany's mind, one day when I make it, which she knew she would, she is just that type of aspirational person. She said, one day I want to make sure other kids don't feel like this. I want to give kids a platform to dream and to live out those dreams and to not feel like garbage, having their things put in trash bags. And so in 2019, after she had some modicum of success, I think people know who Tiffany Haddish is, she founded She Ready Foundation as her philanthropic arm. And in the beginning, gave away luggage. She purchased luggage and would give it away when she was on tour. She would give it away in different places through Department of Children and Family Services or through organizations that she would meet or people who would tell her these are people who are in foster care and they need some support. So Tiffany would support them. As the organization grew, they continued to give away luggage that Tiffany was buying. And one day she called me in 2021. So that's where I come into the picture. And she said, I'm ready to formulate a little bit more with the nonprofit. I need you to come in and support me on this one and take it over, help me to get it going. And so I came on board in May of 2021. And when I came on board, we partnered with Travel Pro Luggage. Travel Pro began to help us give away the luggage, about 1,000 pieces of luggage a year, giving out to young people in foster care. And then we created some other programs, the summer internship program, which Tiffany wanted the summer internship program because she was actually on a set. And on that set, she said, when was this? Oh, she was on the set during the uprising on the Capitol. And she said when she looked around, she didn't see people who looked like they would get what she was feeling, how she was feeling anxious and whatever was going on. She wanted to see some people that looked like her. And in that moment, she said she wanted to start an internship program. So she started a summer internship program, and we worked with an organization, Ready to Succeed, to launch that program in 2020. That program, we took in 15 interns in 2021. And they were all placed in entertainment industry internships, and it was a very successful program. Within that program, we also did something called Life Leadership Academy, where they got to come into class every week with me and with some of our partners and learn different things: social skills, financial literacy, networking skills, communication skills, whatever they needed to learn organically, whatever they asked us about, we wanted to provide them. And we found a lot out. We found out a lot about our kids when we did those classes. So that was very, very heartwarming. We also have a high school tutoring program where we've adopted 35 high schoolers, and we support them in small group and individual tutoring. So that's the bulk of our programs, the luggage program being the largest, and the luggage program is national. The others are right here in our backyard because we figure California has the largest number of foster youth in the country, and California and New York would be the biggest ones. And so we're starting right in our backyard to see if we can remedy something here, and then we may be able to spread out a little more.
Wow. Like, so powerful to see how the seed began with, let's get these children luggage, and then to start with that, and then to move into other areas of their life and supporting them as they, beyond just that. You had mentioned something about kinship for strangers and paying. That was something that I wasn't aware of. If you could just speak a little into that of somebody who's listening in and like, I'm not quite sure what's the difference of kinship versus stranger care.
So kinship care would be finding people that are related to a child when they have to go into some sort of care. And that would be like Tiffany's grandmother was the person who she ended up with, or a sibling, or an auntie, or someone who's in the family. Stranger care are these, most of the time, we hope, loving and caring people who have decided to allow people to come into their homes, to allow these children to come into their homes when their household is broken up or when they're taken from their homes. And so in the system, usually if it's a relative that's taking on a child, the payment is not the same. And sometimes they don't even want to pay that person to take on a child, wherein a stranger signing up saying, I'm willing to take someone in my home, gets the benefits and the pay for taking care of a child. Now, the difference here for me is if I'm a person willing to open my doors and take in a child, love and care for them, wonderful. And the state helps to pay for it because the state is the one who's now taking guardianship of this child. The state is saying the parents can't take care of the child. We're taking guardianship and we're going to place them someplace. So it's the state's responsibility to make sure that that child is in a safe place. They can place them in a stranger's home, and yes, provide some sort of incentive or some sort of financial reward for them so that they could actually take care of the child. It's expensive to take care of children. Mm-hmm. And so to take someone in, it's really for the child's benefit. It's not like you're getting paid all this money as if it's a job. It's taking care of the child. So if you can provide that for a stranger, why not for the very family that could take care of the child? It's still the same cost. You still have to take care of shoes and clothing and whatever after school activities, which many times foster youth do not get. Any of these things are what the money that the state gives. This is what it's supposed to cover. It's supposed to cover things for that child. And so whether they're in care with a stranger who has never met them before and is taking them in, or whether they're in care with a relative or someone that's familiar with them, why not provide equal footing? Why not provide the equal amount of money for that?
Interesting. Of the 8th annual Feminine Weapon Day theme was facing the shadows. And within these systems, there's always shadows of, and there's limited, we have limited attention too. So where do we focus our attention? But when the veil is pulled back on some of these shadows, then we can start to make forward progress into shifting it. What would you say within the, so I can get a little bit more understanding what's happening and listeners, and, when you think of the foster care system within the United States, what are some of the shadows in the system? Give us some insights on that.
Well, as I'm sure you know, as we deepen, there is enough in the world for everybody. So first of all, we have a world shadow, that there's lack and scarcity when there's actually abundance. And we should never have people that are homeless and without, because there is abundance here. And the system actually has an abundance of resources that they provide. Now, the shadow part is, how do you get them? There is a SHAFE program where every state gets a certain amount of funds from the federal government so that foster youth can be taken care of. How the foster youth get access to it is jumping through hoops. And this is governmental systems overall. When I think about my business and getting a disadvantaged business license or a women's business owner license, first thing you would think, of course, would be, go to the Small Business Association and get this certification, right? Oh, no, mine is through the Department of Transportation. Okay. Now, how would I figure that out? To go to the Department of Transportation to get certified to be a disadvantaged business. Now, there is some logic to their reasoning, is that's one of the largest departments that gives out contracts and things like that. And so they certify through there. But it doesn't make logical sense. And such is the system of foster care. Many things, young people have to jump through hoops. having something like a youth development department would be wonderful, so that if they need transportation, they get to go there. If they need clothing, they get to go there. If they need shelter, they get to go there to the youth department. How about a youth department for foster youth? Instead, they have to go to different places to receive different resources, including She Ready Foundation. We're one of the places that helps provide. So there's plenty out here, but the navigation of it and the access to it is what makes it challenging and limiting. That's where the shadow is, I believe. The other part is how we take care of our communities. An example would be Tiffany's mom, who was dealing with the challenges that she had from an accident. How about supporting that person and providing resources for that person so that they could take care of their children versus you're not taking care of your children well, so we're going to take them away. There are many cases where it's a matter of, well, we don't have running water, or we don't have shelter, or we don't have food, or we don't have this. And so that therein, in the government's eyes, makes you a bad parent. How about providing the resources and finding ways to help people to kind of get up on their feet and have shelter and have food and have clothing so that they could be better parents? And I think that's the other shadow, just how we deal with people as a community. We're not as communal as we need to be in terms of taking care of each other. And then I would say the third part is how we view youth who are impacted by foster care. And I so try to say it differently than foster care, foster youth, because we have to see them as young people who are impacted by the system, not as system people. So I do my best to switch how we say things. Words are so powerful. I ran a youth center in South Los Angeles, a place called Home Youth Center, doing gang prevention and intervention. And people would say, oh, you work with at-risk youth. No, I work with at-promise youth in an at-risk environment. Our youth are at promise. They're not at risk. They live in at-risk circumstances. So feeding into our communities, seeding into our children, the words that uplift them and elevate them, I think is really important. And I believe that we also put a shadow on young people by naming them something or telling them that they're less than or not enough.
I really love that awareness around, because I had, in my years of fundraising and doing this work, I would share mainly that we are raising funds for children of abuse, extreme poverty, and human trafficking. And then, sometimes I play with this at-risk youth. But there was something, that you're essentially labeling somebody as challenged, and when do they rise outside of that? So I love this reframe of at-promise youth in at-risk environment, because it is an environmental circumstance or situation. And in that process, as you're elevating, when you're working directly with the children, elevating them, and even not even just the children, as you even mentioned, Tiffany's mom, of this idea of switching over to, how about supporting the people right there with inside of, who are struggling themselves, as opposed to, oh, I'm going to just take them away and put them over here, and kind of compartmentalizing. And then within the compartmentalizing, the complication of the whole entire system. I appreciated how you talked about that, because one of my themes for this year for me is simplicity, of how do we simplify everything, because it doesn't have to be so complicated. Now, you mentioned this moment that I can see through that you're sharing about your wisdom and your experience, but in that call that Tiffany had made to you to, hey, I'm ready to take this 501(c) to the next level. Why is it that she called you?
So I mentioned I work with a place called Home, and Tiffany worked with me at a place called Home in the past. I hired Tiffany years ago when she was in her 20s, and she was a youth development coordinator. She came to me on the recommendation of one of her friends, and her friend said, "Oh, just hire her. Don't ask for a resume or anything." And I was like, okay, well, what am I going to hire her for? She's like, I don't know, just hire her. And so Tiffany came in. And she could have brought me a resume because Tiffany she had worked with the airlines before and all of that, but she didn't bring a resume. And I asked her, what did she know how to do? And she says, well, I know how to make people laugh. So I thought, okay, let's make her a youth development coordinator. Go make the kids laugh, have fun with them. And she was amazing. She was like a Pied Piper of kids. She would bring them anything you would think of. Tiffany would come up with. One of the favorite things that she did was an event called Chuckles, Not Knuckles, where she had the kids bring their jokes to fight it out, to duke it out instead of fighting. And it was a great event. We ended up doing something even at the Improv where the kids got to have their names up on the marquee. And it was just really a great place to be and to develop young people. So Tiffany knew me from a place called Home. She knew I was the executive director there. And Tiffany is somewhat prophetic. She was like, one day I'm going to have a street called Tiffany and Haddish, and we're going to be at the corner of Tiffany and Haddish. And one day I'm going to have a nonprofit and you're going to run it. And one day I'm going to do this. So she called me and she was like, remember the one day? and so that was the day. And she called me and asked me to come in and take over what she had started. And so, of course, I said yes and agreed to work with her on getting this thing continuing this thing that she had started. So that's our backstory, is we had an opportunity to work together when she was younger. And I've seen her grow and develop, and she's done so many things and is such an inspiration to all of us. That's our story.
I love it when, Clubhouse, actually, 8th Annual Feminine Women Day was on Clubhouse. And that's when I had first heard of Tiffany Haddish. And it's in this popping new days of Clubhouse. I don't think I've been on it since we did that 15-hour Feminine Weapon Day event. I was exhausted after that one. But I had remembered that anytime, this little icon would come into a room, Tiffany Haddish, and people would get so excited that she was in the space. I'm like, who is this? Who's this person? I remember going and looking at her Instagram, and just that it was the first incident of like seeding name recognition. And so when I discovered She Ready and I saw that Tiffany Haddish was the founder, I went deeper, and even I'd mentioned it to friends, and they said they were sending me videos of, there's the one when she was with Jaded Smith and or Jaded Pickett Smith, and on the Red Table Talk, and I watched and I was like, oh my, she is so authentic and real, and there is this, I guess, innate kind of outlook of life of bringing humor into situations, and being vulnerable about her experiences that I found captivating. I mean, she's captivated the whole world beyond just me, but I could sense her essence within that. And someone, we Deepen promotes all types of social and transformational experiences. And one of them is called Clown Church. And Clown Church is a mix of improv meets emotional intelligence. And the facilitator Jet they would absolutely love each other. But through her teachings, I learned this. She talks about how tragedy plus time equals comedy. And time can be replaced with space. Like if you can zoom up and look at some situation, as long as it's not like too close, because as you're too close and you're in it, it's hard to find the humor as something is like tragic is really happening. But when you can like zoom out and you can kind of like get distance within the scenario, then you can look down on it and you can have some type of giggle. I can almost from a spiritual perspective look at, God, although God is not necessarily a person, but if it was, of looking at something, be like, look at these little humans running around trying to figure this all out. So I really appreciate that essence about Tiffany, and I can feel about your work. There's a lightheartedness to what is essentially a really heavy subject at particular times. And that then, brings me to like really feeling into love. We happen to be recording this conversation. It's Valentine's Day. And a lot of your work, I think underneath of all that, there must be some connection there. I imagine you have a deep spiritual connection to your existence, but also to love. And oftentimes when around the world, we even just speak of like, I moved through love, or what's up, but like, what does love, it's in our school systems. It's not like there's a class called love. And unfortunately, I would love for there to be a class called love, but we're not like aligning on what even is love. So I would just love to hear you speak about what love is to you.
Oh, thank you for asking that. And I love what you're saying, number one. And let's see, what love is to me. When you said the spiritual portion, I think that's what resonates with me. And also, it's funny when you said there's not a class in love. I went to a Catholic school, and we actually had a class that we should have called love, because no matter what, we would be dozing off in this class. It was an all-girls Catholic school. We passed notes, not paying attention, doing different things. And the teacher that was in the class, no matter what you said, no matter what she asked in terms of a question, when we weren't paying attention, we would just turn to her and we'd say, love. And she'd say, yes, yes. And so that class should have just been called love, because we would use love or God as the answer, and no matter what, it would be right. So that was a wonderful class and a wonderful memory. But love for me really is connected to me spiritually. And it has to do with just understanding what I learned early in life. Love is patient. Love is kind. It doesn't hold grudges. It's not jealous. All of these beautiful things that are biblical, that are right in the Bible, that speak to what love is. And even what Jesus says is the greatest commandment, that you love one another as I've loved you. And that to me is the most unconditional, unselfish love you can have, to just care about somebody the way someone else has cared for you. And in terms of a Christian methodology on that, it speaks to Jesus dying on the cross, and that was the love that he had. I would die for you. So to love someone enough that you would die for them, and that's just a deep love. That's the type of love that makes mothers move a car when their child is stuck. Literally, mothers have been able to lift a car when their child is stuck. Or the type of love that a bear has over the cub, where that bear will take you out if you come near the cub. That is what love is. It's caring about people so much that you're selfless and not thinking so much about you, but you're thinking about who they are and what their life is. And I think that's what love is to me. It's that unselfish, unconditional, no matter what, I love you. And that's what I have for the people that are in my life. Whatever they bring to the table, all their flaws, all their faults, whatever it is, it's sort of like, I love you. We don't have to agree. I love you. And we keep moving. So that's love for me.
Do you think that you can love everybody? Like, do you meet somebody and love them from that first encounter?
And I like that question too. I used to tell my daughter when she would say, I hate this, or I hate this person. I'm like, hate is a very strong word. And I don't think you hate the person. Maybe you hate their behavior. Maybe you hate what that person did. But we don't hate anybody. We love everybody because you got to see yourself in each person. So everybody that I see, no matter what happens, I try to see me in them, or I try to see the God in them. And sometimes I have to go really deep, like, okay, I'm really looking here. This is really a tough, let me put my glasses on, because it is really, really hard to find some good in you here. But I do my best to see the good. And when I don't, when I really can't find it, I still love them anyway. Because for me, loving someone is releasing all that negativity from me. It's sort of like if I can just say, I love you anyway. It releases whatever it is they tried to throw on me. It just kind of lets it out. And so do I deeply love them? Like, oh, I'm just in love with you? No. But in general, I do. I feel like I love everyone. And it feels good because you look at a person and be able to say, I love you. I love you.
And I think too is like over the years of, love is also boundaries as well. Because I love you doesn't mean that I spend every moment with you, or, because we have limited capacity. Love doesn't necessarily mean attention. Love doesn't mean that I self-sabotage my own being to give to you. So
I think it's really about that spirit, that soul spirit is what I'm talking about. I love that inside part of you because you're a being, you're a human being here, put on this earth and you're a part of me. It's almost like the ocean. You have all these drops in the ocean and you can't see the drops, drop all the time. You just see the ocean. But the ocean is a lot of drops, a lot of raindrops. We are all individual raindrops, but we're really one. We're one human being, one human kindness, or one human community. And I think I'm in love with that idea of community, that as we come together, we get to be that one spirit. And we're all individual souls, all individual, but at the same time, communally, the difference we make, that's the one right there, because we're here on this one earth all together. That makes us the one. I think that's what I'm in love with, is that communal spirit.
One thing that drives me to focus on the children, to make We Deepen's philanthropic initiative about supporting children who may not have the parental figures in their life that are providing them with love is partly around all of the awareness that I gained growing up around trauma. And love, from what I take in, love is learned, love is practiced. And if there is, and we've, a lot of the learnings that we take in are happening at those really young, ripe ages, from, coming out of the womb and into those early years. And if a child is not, given that support, is not feeling the skin of another human being and looked after, then that starts where the trauma is then built and created. And so I have this awareness around, if, we want to see shifts and changes in the world from what I look at as negative behavior, guns and violence is negative behavior. But if I can picture myself, in some I don't know why I sometimes picture myself in some scenario with someone holding a gun and being like, no, but love. And they're like, what are you talking about? What do you mean? And so there's this, this drive inside of me that through this initiative with Feminine Weapon Day and the other initiatives that we roll out is this expression of love to show, this action that, that we can, like that there's so much abundance of love. Love is abundant, and that we can, as the grown-ups, provide that for the youth. So in working with the children and also thinking of the programs that creating, how does that tie into, and I know this weekend you even just came out of a trauma, working on a trauma program, coaching around that, of doing circles. How does that all tie in with your philosophy as well?
Oh, I really like what you're speaking to now. When you speak to We Deepen and the idea of Feminine Weapon Day and thinking of femininity as a weapon. And so many times, femininity is not a weapon. We just went through the Super Bowl, and of all the acts that were at the Super Bowl for the halftime show, one woman up there. And absolutely everyone knows Mary J. Blige, very talented. Not the highest paid up there, not actually the lowest paid up there as a woman. And so gender inequity is still there. And as you mentioned, it's Valentine's Day, so we're in Black History Month as well. Mm-hmm. We have those type of inequities as well. Racial inequities are still very apparent. And to think, what if you could use your femininity as a weapon? What if we could use love as a weapon? And I believe in some aspects we can, because when we love into people, it changes things. At a place called Home, when I worked there, we did a yoga class, and Max Strom, I think, was the yoga instructor, and he had all of his yoga instructors had to come to a place called Home in the hood, as they called it, in South Central, to teach yoga in order to get certified to become instructors. And in our classes, we had grandmas, and we had young kids, and we had former gangsters, and we had current gangsters. And they were all in the yoga class waiting for the yoga instructors to come in and teach. It was calming. It was peaceful. They brought in the Om. They brought in love. They brought in a spirit of love. And we knew that was what was going to be in that space at that time. And at the time, there was a radio person who asked me about the yoga in the hood. And he said, so what? Yeah, you get a yoga move and it's going to stop a bullet? Well, maybe it will stop a bullet. Maybe it'll stop somebody from pulling the trigger because they actually have now meditated and have calmed themselves. And maybe in that communal setting, they felt like they were a part of something that was one and a part of love, a part of a loving experience. So I think love as a weapon can be part of a philosophy that I have. This idea of bringing community together is definitely a part of my philosophy, but also forgiving people, loving people, allowing them to be who they are, and to empower them, elevate them as much as possible. I mentioned I had at-promise youth in at-risk environments. That's so important to speak into our young people. We recently did a class from mediocrity to greatness. You choose. And we told the youngsters, and these were transition age youth who were between the ages of 18 and 28. And we told them, you get to choose mediocre or greatness. What do you want? And that class ended up being one of the longest classes and one of the most traumatic classes and tear-filled classes, because these young people were saying nobody ever told us we could be great. They told us, in fact, that we probably want to stay under the radar in order to get the services that we get. So we're supposed to be mediocre or less than mediocre. And so when we spoke to them and said, you must step into your greatness because you are great. We don't want you to be mediocre. And I actually said, you're not going to get to choose now. I'm going to choose for you. You're great. And you're going to continue to be great. And so that was one of the most powerful classes that we had. We have to speak that into our young people. And mentioning Black History Month, that was the class I just did this week. It was an emotional emancipation circles, and it was dealing with the traumas that we have as Black people, and understanding that we actually do have traumas because of that racial inequity that I spoke to, because of what was told who we were, because of all those hurts that many times we don't even understand that they're there. We don't even understand what people have said that have scarred us. And many times it might have been our own people saying it because they were taught the lie. And so in that lie, they teach it to each other. Our mantra was defy the lie, embrace the truth. Defy the lie of white superiority, embrace the truth of Black humanity. Understanding that we are humans. That is who we are. We are humanity. We're part of humanity. Black, white, red, yellow, whatever, it's humanity. And if we just take that in, see each other as the human beings that we are, I believe we could love a lot more, and we definitely could use it as a weapon.
So much good that you shared within that. First, at Feminine Weapon Day, after the event, I had asked a few people what their favorite part of it was, and a few of them had responded that it was hearing you speak. And you did share that story around greatness, like of staying in this media ochre level is what a lot of them are being conditioned to do, and not told that they are great. My question is how, so, and we talked a little bit, if I rewind the conversation, you also had mentioned around, the system and funding and the complications around it. So as you're doing your work out in the world, how much of is it that you then reflect on or go to government to support what you're doing versus just saying, you know what, I'm going to go elsewhere because this system, like how do you reconcile where the system plays a role and where to just break through and create something completely new and different?
Well, I like new and different. So that would be my first go-to. And I don't think the government is this evil force that's not allowing things to happen. I just think it's not simple. Like you said, the simplicity. I think we just have to get around some old infrastructure that just needs to be torn down. Systemic racism, when it's systemic, that means it's deeply rooted. It's deep down there. When you build a house, you build it on a solid foundation, hopefully. And that means if you're going to tear it down, it's going to take a lot. You got to, really grind up that cement. You're going to have to hit a wrecking ball with it. And so when we have these systems that have been so deeply entrenched, and paperwork on top of paperwork and bill on top of bill and all this, it makes it very complicated. It doesn't mean you stop using it. It doesn't mean you stop fighting for it to become simpler. It just means it's going to be a longer period of time before you can break through it. Going individually to human beings is always the best route to me. And actually, if you look at the giving statistics, the majority of funds are given from individuals, not from foundations, not from government, not from any other entity, but from individuals, human beings who see there's something that needs to be fixed. Let's fix it. And so the first thing I would do is reach out to people, one-on-one, group settings, sitting in the Feminine Weapon Day, just like I did with your group. I love that engagement with people, because it is us. It is we people, you, me, everyone who comes on board, everyone that was there for Feminine Weapon Day. We are the ones that are going to make the change. We're the change that we've been looking for. That's it.
And it is Black History Month. And this training that you went through, I am curious, there's a part of me that's inside that's like, I I want to be a fly on the wall. I want to hear the stories, and I've been really, I guess, blessed this lifetime to have friends of a diverse set of friends, and I think there's sometimes of being vulnerable and having the questions. Like I've sat, one of my best girlfriends is a Black woman, and she shared, there was one time her and I were sitting at Air One, and we were in the outside garden area, and she was sharing a story of an experience of a racist experience that she had within work. And I had remember of listening to her and asking the question, like, well, how do you know that was because you were Black? And it was because her and I have this innate trust. She knows I'm actually really curious. I'm trying to understand. And there was, when we looked up at one point, we could see there was people that were just listening to our conversation because I was asking the questions that I think they wanted to ask too, but they're too scared to ask. So it creates this resistance. And I could see during, when George Floyd's murder had happened, there was a big call out to, if you have a community, do something. And we deepen on Zoom probably within 3 days, and there was still the circling of the helicopters, and there is and I could, within the circling helicopters were stopping, and there was so amazing to see that probably around 33 people of color came and they shared their stories of racism. And I could see not only, and it was all of us in this space, there was like 175 people on Zoom, and we just sat and had space, and I could see the kind of even the eyes lighting up around the friends of color that were in the space that were hearing similar stories, and then the tears from us that were getting to access to these stories. And it was, when I still think back into that moment, there was, like the agitations were super high. I mean, there was some definitely moments in that conversation that were like tense, and then some that were just, like eye-opening moments. And, I'll say for me, of doing the work that I do in the world, there's something like when my girlfriends, my Black girlfriends, get behind and have been supporting Feminine Weapon Day year after year, some of them, and there's just something that activates me even more. It's like when I can feel their trust, and also knowing along the way that I don't always get it right. Like I
think the trust part that you talk about is what's important, because there's a place for those conversations, but it has to feel like a safe space. The trauma of retelling one of those stories is real, and that's something I don't think we as Black people, I know as me as a Black woman, I didn't even recognize it until I started taking the class that I'm taking. Retelling the story is traumatizing. Mm-hmm. When people talked about, did you see the George Floyd tape? I couldn't watch more than 2 minutes of that. It's not normal. That's not normal for us to be able to watch someone killed on national television. To air it for that long, to tell people it was 6 minutes or 8 minutes or whatever number of minutes. That's not who we are as human beings, watching people die. That's just, it shows how we've become so desensitized to our own emotions and our own feelings to be able to watch that. I was in tears when I first started watching it, and I couldn't watch the rest. And people told me different things that happened within it. And I was like, I'm not going to subject myself to that. It's traumatizing. Mm-hmm. And to think, if you have a young boy, I have nephews, I have family members that could be them. It could be them. And so I think we have to have safe spaces to share. That's one of the reasons we have these circles, because it's a circle that feels like a safe space to share in. It's people who have had a similar experience or something that you could actually relate to. Now, your friend trusted you enough to know that it was curiosity, and many times it's curiosity. But again, it has to be set up such that it is a safe space of learning. And I think the other part that's important is this idea of allyship. And allyship looks different in so many different ways, in different situations. Allyship at work could be standing up for a coworker and challenging a system that's inequitable. Allyship in terms of a situation where you guys were sitting together, if another white person had seen you asking that question and your friend looked like she was offended or something, that other white person could have come over and said, do you understand what you're doing when you ask her that question? And maybe you could have had a different conversation. So allyship looks different. It's standing in the gap. It's seeing the inequities and helping to fill them a little bit, or at least call them out, because usually they're not called out. People turn a blind eye as if it didn't happen. It didn't exist. George Floyd was not the first black man murdered publicly, whether they're running away or whether they were running toward something. We know the names. We know Ahmaud Arbery. We know Breonna Taylor. We know these names. And so calling it out, other people calling it out, other than black people saying, hello, you're killing us. Other people saying, hello, you're killing them. That's allyship. Actually recognizing it. It's what the civil rights movement was about. When we began to get more people, when it got televised, when you saw the dogs jumping on children and women and knocking them down, that's when people started getting involved and saying, wait a minute, that's a child. That's a woman. Whatever the color is, that's not right. They're putting dogs on these people. And then change started to happen because we started coming together again in community, as a community, seeing each other and saying, you know what? I may not know you, but you're a human being. So let's work together to make what's wrong stop. So I think it's about that community and having that safe space and bringing us together. We just have to do more together.
More together, the allyship. I really appreciate you sharing that. We're coming to a close of this podcast, and I know that within the We Deepen community, there's a curiosity around the guides of these social and transformational experiences of how can they support, how can they bring their programs to the children? How can they serve the children? And then there's also a curiosity around that I feel of like, how can we forge greater allyship? And so I guess to answer instead of stacking the questions, I'll ask the first one is, what more can we do? Feminine Weapon Day, we have $7,500 that we raised that will go to She Ready, but beyond just the money, what can we do?
Okay, well, thank you. And She Ready Foundation is so honored for the $7,500 that was raised. We really, really appreciate being a part of Feminine Weapon Day and We Deepen organization. We are always looking for resources for our young people, be that our Life Leadership Academy. We do it virtually right now, and I'm building content out for our young people to have live classes. So if there's live classes you could offer on a virtual format, we can see if it fits within what we're doing, and you could absolutely do a live class. They're about 90 minutes, an hour to 90 minutes. We're going to be launching our next internship program coming up. If you have an entertainment industry type of lens in anything that you do, we are looking for paid summer internships for our interns. So we'd be happy to have you interview some of our interns and see if you would take an intern on for a paid internship and possibly a future position. We have some existing interns who have graduated, and some of them are still looking for work. So if you have work opportunities and they're good at public relations, marketing, they've been interns, they're good at being PAs. So we have some good interns who are still looking for work. And then we have our high school tutoring program. We actually hire people to do the tutoring part, but we are going to be looking for mentors in the future as we develop that program out. Stay tuned, and that will be there. Personally, I am looking for someone who understands the metaverse because I want our classes to be in the metaverse so that we have what I'm calling a digital safe haven or a metaverse safe haven for youth who are impacted by foster care to be able to come in and meet a mentor or take a class or play a game with some gamification. I want to play around with some of those things. So if you know anything about that, I'd really like to talk with you. But again, resources. If you can provide any resources, we put resources up for our young people to be able to access. And that would be great opportunities because no matter what you're giving, whether it's your time, your talent, or your tithe or, money, we appreciate it.
Thank you so much. And last question, it's kind of part of that stacking question I just did. What is it? So you've seen a little of the outskirts, some of the insides of We Deepen and its community. What excites you most? Like what if what you've seen and what it could ignite your imagination to what it could be? What is that to you?
Oh, you're asking me a good juicy question here. I love what We Deepen is doing. And the more I learn about the different connections that you have and the collaborations that you do, that is what I'm excited about. I think you already heard it in my love answer. I'm about community and bringing people together. And that's what We Deepen does. It brings in community, but not just at a surface level. You guys go deeper into community. So you're not just saying, oh, everybody come together and have a quick networking event. No, you're saying, how do we deepen our connections so that they grow and so that we can elevate each other or anyone who wants to be elevated who's maybe not within our circle? Let's bring them in. So this, to me, We Deepen is all about that, what I said earlier, the raindrops turning into the ocean. It's that deeper part. You're bringing together these connections, the collaboration, so that we start to nurture each other. And whatever we nurture becomes second nature. And as it becomes second nature, it normalizes this idea of community and love. And so that's what I see We Deepen doing.
Thank you. Thank you so much for seeing us, for participating, for showing up. It has been a joy to work with you. If I can, as you were just speaking, in my imagination, I was like looking at you and like, I would love to have you as an advisor of this organization. And so,
I love that.
Okay, great. And if you're interested in learning more about She Ready, I think Instagram is one easy place to go. She Ready on Instagram. It links to the website. I saw that there is a campaign now when you go to donate. It takes you to the campaign to donate to the Leadership Academy and the internship program that you are speaking of. So you can go and do that as well. If you do, put in there that you've learned of this through Deepen with Christina or through Feminine Weapon Day, and then we can get that 7,500. It's so interesting. I look at this number of 7,500, and there's a thing in me that's like, it's not enough. Like, I want to do more. I do envision this day to, as it, feeling the resilience around it, 9th year, and that it's, once I got through 9th year, I can't not do a 10, then you can't not do 11. And so it's it's as this FW is tattooed to my ring finger, it will not stop. And so one day, and even if it's, now I think we've hit about 72,000 over the past 7 years that we've raised for the children. And I, with my dreamy eyes, look at millions. And that one day, Feminine Weapon Day, January 30th, will have, I guess, smaller or even bigger events happening worldwide that are igniting the power of love, love as our weapon, and really serving the greater good of humanity by increasing consciousness through acts of love. Thank you all for tuning in. Do you have any last minute words?
SheReadyFoundation.org. Visit us there and feel free to reach out. Our phone number is on there as well. Dr. Thyonne signing off.
And Dr. Thyonne does answer the phone. Thank you all for tuning in to another episode of Deep In with Christina. If you enjoyed this show, please subscribe, leave a comment, share it with friends. And also, go check out WeDeepen.com. We have added 2 new podcasts to the network, Political Hope and Elevate to Legendary with Dr. Nikki. Check those out. I just highly enjoy the information and knowledge and the guests that are shared on those shows. So definitely go check them out. And again, look at that calendar, WeDeepen.com/calendar. And we are out in the world. So while you're hearing our voices right now, come meet us in person, because that's definitely what I'm about. We can connect online, and then at least one day this year in 2022, let's be together in person. Okay, bye for now.